here just because I'm so like solid, I guess, and just like a foundation. And so I think that's helped a lot with college, like moving to a completely different city and kind of like being on your own. Like I had you, which was so nice. But like just kind of being there and being like, who am I as a whole? And especially with classes, going by saying, like, I really enjoy going to classes in college, which is kind of, I don't know, might be an unpopular opinion. But like I don't ever mind going. Like of course there's some classes that I was like, not thrilled about, but like overall I enjoyed like being there and actually learning. And I think that came from here, definitely.
That's not the norm.
Yeah.
So I went to Cherry Hills before Anastasis, and I remember it well because I literally hated school. Like I would cry because I didn't understand my homework, and we'd have projects, and like I just like didn't know where to start because there is a starting point and a point that you're supposed to talk about, and like we've talked about a lot. And it was just really hard for me because there was no creativity whatsoever, and like at such a young age, like where you want to be like dreamers and thinkers, like you're not allowed to, like whatsoever. And that's where you spend the majority of your life is like in school. And so having that driven out at like such a young age, I really did like feel hopeless with school. And then
you hated school.
I hated school. Like I literally would like I remember like multiple times where like I'd take a test in like 4th grade and go to the bathroom and cry because like I knew that I failed it. And like I'm a 4th grader, like I shouldn't be crying over failing a math test that I like. Maddie the other day asked me to help her with like something, and I was like, oh, like I know like how like Fink taught this to me, and so I could tell her, but like if someone were to like set a test down in front of me, like I wouldn't be able to do it. And that's like how I was graded. So then I came here, and it was very hard at first because I like had been conditioned to just think like in a line and like how everybody else does, which like I wasn't good at, but I also was so used to it. And so like after a while of being here, like it was really just like a breath of fresh air, and I like actually liked coming to school, and I liked learning, and I liked reading, and like still didn't like math, not a fan, but yeah, so like here was definitely a breath of fresh air, and it like going forward like totally prepared me. And there's still like a lot of stuff that I struggle with, like testing and stuff like that, but when it comes to studying, like Caroline said, like when I understand the material and I can like explain it to someone or like have a conversation about it, that's when I'm like, okay, like I don't need to stress myself out beyond this point, because at this point, like I know like for grade wise, like I'm gonna do fine. But when it comes to like memorizing stuff beyond that, then I'm just doing that because someone's like saying I have to, and I get nothing out of that going forward. So then that's time to like move on to a new subject.
So it sounds like instead of the goal being I have to get a perfect grade, it becomes more internal, where it's like I'm learning for the sake of learning, and this is going to carry me. Like I care if it goes with me, not if in this one point in time it's here.
That's like what really like grades, especially at Cherry Hills, was so like it was very determining of like who you were going to become, and that was the mindset. And like coming here, and then there like weren't any grades, and I was like, how do you know if I'm doing good? Like how do I know, like how do I measure that? And so like that's like going forward, like grades are definitely like important. Like nowadays, like if you want to get into college, like you do have to get the grades. But in high school, I was never like crazy motivated like by a 4.0 GPA. And I wasn't motivated by like, oh, I had friends who would be like, oh, I only have a 90% in this class. I was like, I got an 82, and I'm very happy about that, because like I know like I can have a real life conversation about it as opposed to like holding up flashcards and telling you what they say on the other side. And so yeah, I think that like
you stop defining yourself by that too.
Yeah, and so that's one of the things that's like really important, and it took a while for me to like transition that into high school, because a lot of my friends were like very, very smart people, but then I like realized, I was like, I cannot have a conversation with them. Like that's something that like I can go out and I can go to like even like a job interview and sit down and be confident that like I can talk about my life and who I am. But when I talk to them, like all their conversations consist of grades, boys, and what you're doing that weekend. And beyond that, it doesn't go much deeper. Like if you talk about like there'd be multiple times where I'd walk out of like econ class and we're talking about the government, and it was like during the election, the last election, and I would like walk out and be like, oh, I'm so confused by this, like how like I think this way, but like our professor thinks, or not a professor, our teacher thinks this way, and like you couldn't have that conversation with people. And so that was like difficult for me also, but also,
you all
like,
struggled with that. I remember you coming back a lot and talking about that.
It made me feel good though, because like where my life wasn't determined by a grade, like I could show that like I know like what's happening, and like I can have my own opinion about it rather than doing like just the ABC.
Well, that's also why you end up talking to like teachers too. I mean like good teachers, because we had some really good teachers, and that's why you go from like talking about something in class and you ask like good reliable teachers about it, not your classmates, because they are not.
No, that was definitely like an issue. As I felt like on a lot of stances, I was like a lot more like advanced and like more mentally mature. And like that sounds really like boastful, but like I mean like I just feel like the conversations I was like willing and capable of having were so different than the ones that were having like around me.
So who were you as a student, right?
So I went to Cherry Hills Christian, and I don't really think I was that different among other students. I think I was pretty average and normal, and like you could pluck me from a million and I'd be pretty similar to anyone else my age. But then I came here, and I think it was just incredibly formative for me to understand myself. And I realize now, even in college, like looking back, a lot of my understanding of like myself comes back to like here, like Abby said earlier, and like that's been super amazing for me. When I went to school here, I think one of the most like important elements was just for me and like where I was at in life. It was really important for me to have conversation and like understand God and like my relationship with the world, just because that was like for me particularly, that was when my parents were getting a divorce, and like so that was just like a hard time in general. But having the ability to like talk about the world and like God's intention for us and all of that was just so crucial, because at that time like I wasn't very hopeful and I wasn't very excited and happy. But here I realized how like insignificant that was in the scheme of things, and I saw like God's plan being greater than my own. And in high school, being put back in like a situation where like everyone is pretty similar, it did set me back to a degree of just, you know, going through the motions. However, I realized that looking back on it now, that I don't think I by any means like lost what I learned here, but I was able to be more intentional. Like even now I can think of classes that I realized I was not going to remember all those dates, so I would learn them. And there's like a lot of things, you know, like I did just do flashcards. But then there was like conversations we'd have in class, like even this past semester, that I was able to be super intentional about being like, but this is beneficial and this is important, versus the classes where I'm like, I'm just doing this to do the class. And like being able to distinguish like moments of growth and opportunity for like knowledge and learning and all that, versus like just like moments of like motion and like going through it, was very crucial for me moving forward in high school and in college. And being able to be intentional with that as a student, I get good grades, I'm a good student, and I just think that is because I can now learn like what's important to me versus what I just need to know for a piece of paper.
What would you say to parents who are nervous about their kids being prepared for what comes after anastasis? What would your advice be for them?
I'm so glad your student went here, because they wouldn't be as prepared if they didn't go here, because it prepares them on levels that are more important than just getting a good grade.
Yeah, I think that like I think that I would just say like it's so important that they are here, just because like what I talked about earlier, how being at another school at such a young age is so restraining, and it really like takes your creativity away at like a time that you're learning like who you are and how you're supposed to think and stuff like that, and not even how you're supposed to think, but like how you can think. And the fact that you're able to come here and like think for your own and do projects and meet, like hang out and make community and learn how to speak with other people and stuff like that is so much more useful than getting an ABC grade or going and crying in the bathroom because you got a C in 4th grade. Like, that's so much more intentional and so much more important. Just like having like a real life grasp on who you are and what the world looks like.
Yeah, and just kind of going off that, like, no matter where, like, you go to grade school and stuff, like, high school and college are gonna be hard. Like, you're just gonna have trials because that's just kind of life and growing up. And so I think being here is so important because you build a foundation of who you are and, like, the conversations, like, you can have and what you can pursue versus just kind of being blind to that your whole life and not realizing it until you kind of get older and you're like, oh, like, I really missed out on having that, which has just been so important. And even like Rye was saying, how because of it, like, she's learned how to study and just like how to go through school. Like, that's been so crucial, and I never would have figured that out for myself if I hadn't been able to step back and like try different things and like do different experiences. Like, even when we went on the religious pilgrimage, like, I learned so much about just the world and like being open-minded from that I would have never had if I hadn't gone here.
Well, and also like the 3 or 4 of us.
That's hard.
4 of us. We only went here for 7th and 8th grade. Like, I can only imagine what these kids are gonna come out with, like 8 years of this type of education, you know? And I also think like when you learn how to think too, it affects like the type of person you are. You know, like, it makes you analyze your actions and figure out like, is this morally correct? Like, am I on the right track? Especially like with what God wants from me, as far as instead of just having education be separate from like your values and who you are, and like this kind of just jammed them all together. So now like when we're succeeding in college, it's not just school, we're also like succeeding at being or trying to be like good people as well, which lasts forever.
Balance. We learn balance. Can I add something also? So when you guys were talking, I realized that like I even this past like little bit of life have been like thinking about like what I want to do with my future, like my degree and my future job, and a lot of that has been changed because I've been thinking in a lot more terms of what I've learned here, like how am I going to live a successful life with also being fulfilled, like spiritually and emotionally, and like how am I going to tend to that while also being in like a job that I'm like happy with. And I think if I had a kid, I would want them to go to like on sauces like 100%, just because I wouldn't want them to only be a student, which they're able to learn how to be here, but I want them to be fulfilled, and I want them to have a life that they were satisfied with because they understood themselves. And I want them to have balance, like Caroline said. I don't want my kid to be a 5.0 student that can, well, I'm talking about they're taking APs, baby. I wouldn't want my kid to be like an incredibly smart student on paper, but not sure of themselves and not taking the moves to like understand themselves and understand like, why do I believe in God? Understand those things, like being able to create the balance here. I want my child to be able to have that balance and be completely content with it, because life's hard. It's going to be hard, like Caroline said, high school, college, and beyond. And to be able to learn how to deal with it, how to handle it, and how to get value from life is the most important thing I could give my child. And I would pick my child to go here 100%.
And how to like learn from life, not just like move on. That's what like high school and like middle school, like at Cherry Hills, like taught you. Like you learn something and then you move on and you don't revisit it ever. And like going here, like everything that you learn, like I've said multiple times, like we have all thought back to like what we've learned here, or like when we were going forward. Like it's so easy to get to college and be like, okay, I want to come out with this job. Like I want to have a major with like a high success rate. And then like I sat down and was thinking about it, and I was like, this isn't like, I don't want to be stuck in one place. I don't want to just like go out of college and be like, okay, like I'm following the steps, I'm doing my little plan for life. And so yeah, I just think it's really important to learn how to like learn from life, and that's what you do here.
It's connective.
Yes.
All right, thanks, ladies.
Good job.